Hi, everyone, and welcome to another Home Tech. I am Seth Johnson, and I'm joined by Jason Griffin. And Jason, hey, Alexa, how's my butt look?
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh man, this is a funny device. I'm not quite sure what to make of this new Amazon Echo Look. Can give apparently Echo is now in the business of giving you fashion recommendations, which I find fascinating.
Yeah. So I don't know. I had to ask my wife on this one. I sent her a text.
Any home tech story that starts with "I asked my wife about it," typically a good one.
Well, I mean, I don't understand the market for this one, and to be okay, let's be fair. When we first saw the Echo, I kind of almost think I said the same thing. Like, I don't really. This is such a weird introduction to a product. I guess that we're all kind of used to Apple and doing like the finely polished demo and looking at the nice product, and other tech companies have kind of taken to that and tried to replicate what Apple has done with their presentations. And Amazon, I mean, if you go back and look at the original Echo commercial, man, it was like a family, and the dad got this box in, and he's telling his wife how to talk to the Echo, and
right.
She's yelling at it, and he's like, "No, honey, you don't have to yell at it. It has far-field microphones." And I kind of feel the same way about this weird little camera thing that they've come out with. It's a strange device, and I really don't know who this is for. Like I said, I asked my wife about it, and she said something along the lines of, "Well, I'm not a fashion blogger, and it's kind of a strange product." So, keep in mind, when she saw the Echo come out, she pre-ordered the thing, and we had it. We had it in May of that year. And I think most people were just finding out about it later in the year, getting it towards October. And I think it was a big like Christmas gift that year.
Right.
So we had it really early on because she saw it and immediately purchased it for $199. Now this is $200 too, but kind of a stranger device. Introduction.
Yeah, I think we kind of buried the lead there a little bit, but it's just takes full length pictures. It says here has a depth sensing camera, computer generated background blur. What it does is then takes these pictures, stores them through a companion app, and provides fashion recommendations with a quote style check service and machine learning algorithms paired with advice from fashion specialists. So, pretty specialized use case there. I think the obvious play for Amazon here is to try to sell you some clothes, I guess, would be my assumption. $200 looks like the price point on this, by invitation only currently. So we're still a little bit early on this, and we'll definitely keep an eye. But we jumped right in here. Let's intro the show here, Seth, like we normally do. It's going to be you and me tonight. Like we said last week, we are going to get back into booking mode here on the interview front. We've been off of that for a little while for various reasons, but look forward to getting some guests on the show to that point. If you know of anyone or are someone who would like to potentially be featured on the show, shoot us a line over at HomeTech Podcast on Twitter, and we'd be happy to have a dialogue with you. We're going to cover a bunch of news stories tonight. Before we do that, I want to, as always, thank our patrons of the show. We've got a lot of people who have come on and have supported us through our Patreon page, which you can find more information about at HomeTech.fm/support. Once again, that's HomeTech.fm/support. And if you're interested in learning about how you can support our efforts here at the HomeTech Podcast for as little as $1 a month, we'd encourage you to go check that out. And always want to mention, too, that just at that $1 a month level, you get access to our private Slack channel, The Hub, which has had some really great dialogue lately. And actually, we're going to talk about some of that here later in the show. We've got a few stories about physical control. We've got smart home movie. That sounds like an interesting one. We've got Domot's had a recent announcement here with a network scan that we're going to dive into. The Thing device that they acquired. They assembled some really interesting data, so look forward to tackling that story and a couple other stories about the industry at large. So, Seth, let's get started here. One of the first stories I wanted to touch on actually is Vizio. Now, we're going to go back in time here, just about a year, Vizio announced a P-Series TV. And if you'll recall, one of the interesting things that they did with this series of TV is they tried to do away with the idea of the physical remote. The TV itself actually came with an Android tablet, and they really pulled all of the apps off of the TV. And it was built off of the premise that the tablet itself would control the apps and essentially just cast everything up onto the screen. It was built on Chromecast technology, and at the time they really touted it as a look at the future and potentially that the days of the physical remote were numbered. Well, it turns out that Vizio has announced their P-Series 2017 TVs this year, and lo and behold, we still have a physical remote, and I cannot say that I'm surprised.
So, Jason was right. Who would have thought
That's
that
right.
buttons would be what we're talking about here in 2017? I thought everything was supposed to be a glass tablet that you can't feel in the dark, and it blinds you when it turns on.
Yeah. It toot my own horn just a little bit here. About a year ago, I was doing a little more blogging than I do now on the Home Tech site. I've been a little bad about that. That's a separate conversation. But I did write a piece when I was doing the Home Tech Takeaway series. Vizio thinks your handheld remote is dumb, and the deck on that story was company boldly proclaims the era of physical button remotes is, quote, going to end, but should we believe them, ? And my approach here was that no, we definitely shouldn't, and it does appear that they have found that it just apparently didn't take hold. And so the new P-Series TVs do have Chromecast built in. They've got all the things that you would expect in a modern flat panel TV. However, they have decided to go back to just shipping it with a traditional remote. Quote from the story here that I'm pulling off of The Verge said, the make Chromecast do everything idea was fun for tech enthusiasts, but tough for a large swath of consumers to grasp and get accustomed to. It could also be buggy at times, which doesn't surprise me. Very new approach to TV, and it's hard to get these things right out of the gate. But I think generally this probably came down more so, if I had to guess, less about the bugs and more about people just not being able to really pick it up and grasp it and use it right away. It just breaks such a traditional mold and model that we've had around TVs for so long, and people want physical buttons. Handheld remotes with physical buttons are hands down a better way to view TV than any sort of app experience. Right.
The key word there is use, and I don't think that something like this, it's like one of those cool ideas. Like it's one of those engineering ideas where an engineer comes up with this, and it's brilliant, but it just doesn't translate to normal people who aren't, able to adjust. The TVs we've had these remotes for TVs since, probably the 80s or sometimes before. I remember seeing pictures of remotes that had like bells inside of them. So the button would physically strike this little like chime in there, and the frequency that comes out of the remote would actually not be infrared. It would be sound, and that would change the TV. So remotes have been around for a very long time, and people have grown, really to be really used to having those buttons. And I think we said it before. We'll say it 100 more times. I think that, screens are not great for remotes. A remote needs to have buttons on it, needs to have that tactile feel, and for anyone to use, whether you be visually disabled and maybe you have good enough vision to see the TV, but you can't see up close. There's a million different use cases that just having the feel on the buttons and being able to use an actual remote with buttons is a better way to go. Not to mention it's cheaper and works better, but we'll leave that off the table for now.
Yeah. Right. Well, let's move on here. We've got a second story that I've actually been watching this one for a little while and just wanted to monitor it and see how they were doing on Kickstarter before we jumped in and talked about it. It's called the Vella is how it's pronounced. It's spelled Welle, and we'll include a link to the Kickstarter page in our show notes at HomeTech.fm / what are we, 159 this week, I believe.
159.
And so HomeTech.fm / 159. This is turn any surface into a smart interface. It is a gesture control device that you can set on a tabletop or a counter and essentially turn that surface into a control mechanism for a variety of IoT connected devices. They are at just over 97,000, actually just under 98,000 out of their $20,000 goal. So they're doing very well on Kickstarter, and we don't have to spend a ton of time talking about this. I would encourage anybody who's interested in these next generation user interfaces to, again, go to HomeTech.fm/159 and click through. We'll have a link to the Kickstarter page. It has a pretty interesting video that's kind of cool to see. There's some interesting use cases. The industrial design isn't the prettiest thing on it, but it does appear to be a good concept, and it'll be interesting to watch if they're able to execute and really get this thing out into the market in any meaningful quantity.
Yeah, there was something like this for, and I think it's out there. I saw it at Best Buy when it was out for computers, where you can play like little games that were made. So it's definitely this type of product's definitely possible. Just we'll be curious to see what kind of traction this type of thing gets. Like you said, if it does ship. I don't know. I'm not so much. I know you're kind of big into the gestures part, but I don't really know if gestures is gonna make it very far. I think voice is probably shown to be a better interface than gesture at this point.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think it's kind of fun. I think that it's not necessarily going to be a primary use case. I used to talk more about it. I think that back then I was a lot more bearish on voice control. It's easy to forget how much has changed in just a couple of short years with right. Echo coming to market and how that really has altered the landscape. So I agree. I think it's just a fun product, and it'll be cool to watch. And who knows, it may fit into a certain segment of the market's plans for their smart home and how they want to interact with it.
Well, if they do come out with this thing, maybe they can put it in this new movie I've been hearing all about.
A smart home that'll kill you, right?
Right. I think this was posted to our Slack channel, the Hub, by one of the listeners there. But there's a movie coming out about a smart home that kills people. Aquaman and Saw director James Wan is making a movie about a high-tech home with deadly extras. And I mean, that if that doesn't write itself, I don't know what does.
No kidding.
Yeah.
No kidding. That's a softball right there.
So the idea is there's this family that has been placed into a witness protection program, and they get put into this home that has all these high-tech amenities and lethal defense modes to fight off the assassins that will be gunning for them. Okay.
I don't even know. I really don't even know what to say about this one. I can't tell if it's is it meant to be like a thriller, or is this supposed to be kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing that makes you laugh a little bit? Did you get a sense for the direction they're going with this?
I don't know. I mean, this movie who knows if it'll see the light of day, but they're saying that they're going to do it, so it wouldn't be that hard to do, right? I mean, you would just kind of have to have some stupid technology, kind of start shooting and attacking people and whatever. This is really, really dumb, but Hollywood, what are you going to do?
The house activates its lethal defense mode to fight off assassins gunning for the family. You don't get that in CNET's smart apartment. I love it. Well, this will be funny to see if that makes the light of day. That transitions nicely into another story I wanted to talk about, and I want to thank Chris Backus, who's been a longtime supporter of the show and sent us this link on Twitter. I had not heard of this before. It is called BrickerBot, and this is the short version of this is it's a version of malware that is going out and bricking IoT devices, like literally just bricking them so you can't use them anymore. And it was designed by a gentleman who's actually, well, first let me say it's named Janitor, and that's relevant because the idea behind this is it's going out and essentially cleaning up the internet, and obviously very rude for it to be shutting down people's devices. And I'm sure if you're on the receiving end of this thing, you're not so happy about it. But the guy who started it here says it's, the point is that BrickerBot is shutting down devices before truly malicious software can take control of them. So meant to be an attention-grabbing thing and serving a purpose, I suppose, in the grander scheme of calling attention to IoT and security. But I sure would not like to be on the receiving end of this, at least initially.
Right. Now, this was built on the Mirai botnet. We've talked about it pretty extensively in the past about cameras, like security cameras, mostly that were hacked, that were left on the internet with default passwords, and someone made what's called an internet worm, and that worm would go out and search for an open device, load its software on that device, and then that device would start looking through the internet for more open devices. And what they ended up making was this giant botnet where they could do attacks on websites. And we had, there was a couple of days there, a couple of weeks where there were maybe a hack every week that would come through, and we'd have a denial of service on major websites like Twitter and can't remember most of the other ones, but big websites that we were trying to get to weren't working and got taken down. So this is kind of like vigilante justice, right? So this guy has made BrickerBot on the same Mirai botnet, but instead of infecting it, this thing just, I mean, what it does is pretty ingenious. It takes down like the I'm looking at the code that it spits out, and it basically just deletes. It sets everything to a random, looks like random number or something, and deletes the IP route tables. So it pretty much kills the device altogether. I mean, there's nothing that this thing is not going to come back from anything once this is done. So pretty interesting that someone has gone to this effort to do this, but it's good, I guess. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of like morally.
It's like one of those things.
Yeah.
That's why I said I wouldn't like to be on the receiving end of it, at least initially. Once the shock wore off, I might be, I suppose maybe, well, let's not lie. I wouldn't be happy.
You wouldn't be happy.
It,
no. I mean, this is going to kill off your device. I mean, it's not coming. You can press the reset button on the back. It's not coming back from this. Yeah. So this wouldn't be fun to have happen to you. But at the same time, unknowingly, if you had one of these devices, like we talked about this, these were security cameras that were put on the internet. I mean, this could be a business like that has a security camera for, watching the back cash register, and all of a sudden it doesn't work anymore, and they go around and look and all the other ones aren't working anymore. Well, it's because this guy wrote this program that bricked all these cameras. That's not so good. But at the same time, those cameras are being used for other activities that were, illegal or suspect or whatever. So I don't know.
Yeah, I got a laugh out of it because Chris Backus, who's at AV Control Guy, tweeted this, like I said, and he mentioned us, and he mentioned Mike Wolf, good friend of the show, on there as well. And Mike's response gave me a good laugh. He said he hadn't heard of it before, and then he quoted it, calling it internet chemotherapy.
Well, that's a great description, isn't it? Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, it says, so from the story here, BrickerBot attacked 1,895, so just under 2,000 devices in the first 4 days. BrickerBot.3, so it sounds like it's gone through multiple iterations already, attacked nearly 1,400 in 24 hours. So not huge numbers there, but not insignificant, and I think a story definitely worth paying attention to.
If you got that deadly smart home, you just need to get one of these BrickerBots. And
might save your life.
It may just save your life.
Well, speaking of connected devices, we teased this story specifically at the beginning. Domots is a company that we've had Domenico on here from Domots a while back, right around the time when they really had first come out. And since then, they've been plugging away. They acquired the company Fing, which, if you're not familiar, is a very popular network scanning utility, is how I would describe it. I know I used the app on my phone for years when I was out in the field to do IP scans and very basic network diagnostics and troubleshooting and this sort of thing. Well, they purchased Fing a while back. Fing now has, the story off the Domots website, it's 18 million downloads and about 1 million registered users, so fairly significant numbers there. What they did, I think, is pretty clever. They leveraged that scanning ability to analyze 1 million networks, and presumably the people on the other end of this have opted in some sort of terms of service agreement, and the data, I'm sure, was anonymized, so no concerns there. This is not a security story. I want to be clear. The first analysis that they've put out here based on those scans, again, 1 million networks, and they analyzed for smart TVs and streaming devices, and top line viewpoint is they said 50% of networks use a media device, which I believe they are defining as a streaming, like a set-top box or a smart TV. So 50%, I don't know. I actually felt like if they were including smart TVs, because basically every smart TV out there would qualify for this, I actually thought 50% was low. I might have guessed even maybe a little bit higher than that.
Yeah, that is an interesting number. I was looking at further down on their breakout. They actually broke it down by the countries that they looked at, which is UK, US, Germany, France, Spain, and Italy. The US by far has not by far. Sorry, the US has 61%, followed by UK, Germany, France, Spain, and Italy, rounding down at 41%. So I would say in the US here, we've probably seen more of an influx than maybe other places have, and that's where that 50% number is coming from. I would say with our clients, Jason, I would say the number is much higher, right? So that's
sure.
Probably what we're seeing, and our bias on that. But this makes for a good read, because it go through a number of things, like phones that are branded Apple, and you can see in the US that Apple is 59% dominant over the 53% other phones. I guess that would be non-Apple or Android. But if you go to a place like Spain, 70% and 36% are Apple. So that's so
70% in Spain, 70% non-Apple,
right?
Yeah, and 36% Apple. Yep. That was interesting. One of the other pieces that was in that specific section of this piece, and again, I agree with you. I think this is a really interesting read. Would encourage people to go check that out. This one I thought was almost a little buried. I thought it was a pretty staggering number personally. It says, you probably won't be surprised to hear that 1 out of every 4 IP-connected devices discovered by Fing was Apple branded. 1 out of every 4. That's a huge number.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
I mean, they're saying of every IP connected device, 1 out of 4 was Apple.
Wow, that is interesting. That's 200. If you look at the top, they did nearly that $1 million that million device. It's 933,446. So 25% of that is 233,361 devices. That's incredible.
Yeah. I thought that was a pretty surprising number, but then that section does go on more to emphasize mobile phones and what's going on there. I want to move here quickly to the next one. I don't want to make sure we don't skip this one, because it is the most popular media connected devices. So Apple TV is on there. These are Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, Chromecast, and Roku. And if we just look at the U.S. market for just a second, Apple TV is leading the pack, according to this study, by 33%, with surprisingly Fire TV coming in second place at 24%. I would have guessed either Roku or Chromecast would have been in second place. So I thought that was interesting as well.
Yeah, I would definitely have thought that would have been the other way around. I hear more about Roku than I do Apple TV or Amazon, but it looks like in the UK, the Amazon Fire TV is extremely popular, which I would not have guessed. So that's all interesting numbers. Go over to they've got a nice little blog post. We'll put it in the show notes. Go over, take a look at it for yourself. Take a look and see what the marketplace looks like in your area and around the rest of the world. Yeah.
Last one I want to mention here, and we'll move on, because I thought this was insightful here. Smart TVs, most popular smart TVs on media connected networks. Samsung across the board in every country that they did is leading the pack.
I'm less surprised about that, I guess.
I don't know that I'm not necessarily shocked by it. I just thought it was a good insight to know, because you look at all of these other ones and there are discrepancies and variances across different parts of the world, but worldwide, Samsung appears to have smart TVs really dominating that market.
I wonder where that is. I wonder if it's like the onboarding process that, because you have to think about, like, this isn't just custom installers. This app is open to everyone, and anybody who can download this app can scan a network and look for devices. I use it at my house to like find a camera that I just bought. This little camera. I'm trying to find the IP address of it before I had it set. And I was like, oh, how am I going to do this? I'm going to use Nmap at the command. I'm going to scroll through and find the stupid. No, I have Fing on my phone. I can just go through and it actually knows what the manufacturer is on there, and I can find the IP address within a few seconds. So, a lot of people are going to be using this over, just integrators, and I think that this number is interesting. But I wonder what the difference is between a Samsung and a Sony TV that people aren't getting the Sony TV online. Because around the world, Sony TV barely breaks out of 5%. I would say is the average that they have on there.
Yeah, it was right around there.
Yeah, so I wonder what the difference is.
Yeah, it is. It is interesting. I think your point about maybe the setup and onboarding is maybe there is some relevance there. I really don't know. I'm very aware of the fact that Samsung is a very dominant player in the worldwide TV market, but I guess I just didn't realize it would be that, I don't know, that definitive worldwide. There was really no discrepancy.
I wonder what these numbers look like in Japan.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's an interesting point. So let's move on here. We're going to change gears a little bit, getting a industry specific here. And this is a story that we wanted to save a little bit towards the end and make sure we left some time to chat about. We had some great dialogue over in the Hub. Give that another quick plug. Our private Slack channel that has grown steadily and has become a really great community of dialogue around the smart home. And Bruno, who is the founder of Krika, which is a remote systems management and RSM company based out of France, who if you listen to the show, you're probably familiar with, put up a blog post on his site that, again, we'll include a link to, and you can click through and check that out. And the subheading here is "The Days of AV and Home Automation as We Know It Are Numbered." And it's a fairly lengthy piece that really dives into the current landscape in home technology and what's going on with big companies like Google and Apple and Amazon and even Facebook to a certain extent coming into the picture. There's an acronym that he used in here, GAFA, G-A-F-A. I have to admit, I had not heard that before, but I like that. I think it's useful for conversations around the smart home and what's going on there. And so what GAFA, what the implications are of these big companies coming into the smart home, and in particular for people who do this as a profession. What does that mean, and where does that leave us? So really, like I said, really great dialogue in the Hub. A lot of differing viewpoints about that, Seth, and I know you and I had some spirited dialogue as well as part of that conversation around this piece. Yeah.
Over the weekend was fun because we had a bunch going on this weekend, and and I'm like, the Slack channel just blowing up with all of the dialogue that we were having. And I don't know, you can probably tell if I'm at my computer and how much I'm able to type and hit enter. And then when I'm on my phone and it's like a short sentence, no verbs.
Yeah.
It's like, does that make sense? I don't know, send. And so there were a couple of things. Man, if you're an AV integrator and you haven't read this piece by Bruno, I would suggest going over and doing it. It's very interesting. GAFA is huge, and I love that term, GAFA. He uses it throughout the piece, and it's I don't know, Jason, it's the first time you've heard of that? I think it's the first time I've heard of it. For sure.
It was. And when I admittedly, I went and Googled it. I was pretty sure I knew what it was when he first introduced it in the piece, but I went and Googled it. And it came up. I got the sense, I didn't spend a lot of time reading about it, but I got a sense that maybe it's a more common term overseas to describe, the big four American tech companies. So actually not a very common term, at least not in the circles that I run in here in the States, but who knows, I could be completely out of touch, and maybe just about everybody knows that but me. I had not heard it before.
I don't think you are out of touch. I mean, Julie Jacobson read his article and was conversing with him about GAFA on Twitter as well. So I don't think that I think it's going to gain some traction now, thanks to this article.
Yep.
I don't know if that was the intent of the article, but I can definitely say that it was entertaining when I ran across that and said, "Oh, yeah, that's really smart. I really like that." So the point of the article that he's trying to make is that the GAFA companies, Google, Apple, Facebook, and Amazon, are going to be pushing into the home automation space, the home automation and smart home marketplace, and that will push, that will have some, and we know that will have some effect on integrators, right?
Without question.
I mean, I guess we're all in agreement that is going to happen. And Bruno, I can't tell if this article is as dark as he means it to be, or he's just like trying to like clap really loudly in front of integrators and say, "Guys, wake up!" Because he definitely makes some points in here that I think that integrators out there need to know and need to realize this is happening. It's happening fast. It's happening way faster than anybody, I think, realistically is giving it credit for. And I don't think that many integrators out there know how fast this is going to come down. And everybody kind of does that hand wavy thing, like, "Oh, we'll always be needed. We'll always need to do this." And he had a good point in here about being in the 80s and having a computer, and like how you had to go find I'm going to kind of diverge here because I ran across an advertisement for a Radio Shack. Remember when that company existed? TRS 80. They made the Trash 80, as we lovingly called it. It was a computer for. It was the first complete, low-priced, fully assembled microcomputer, is the way it's here in the advertisement. But it's here in the ad. I'll put this in our show notes. Here's the answer for thousands of people who need a complete, inexpensive, ready-to-use computer without the delay and problems of building one. And that was the beginning of piece together computers that you could just buy off the shelf. And it slowly went through an iteration where you bought parts and you put them together, and then you bought parts that were all color coded and you put them together, and then you just buy a computer now. Like you don't even, there's no process of putting together pieces and figuring out how block A goes into block B. And that exact same process is happening. It has been happening. It's not even happening. It's happening right now. And we're well beyond the color coded part, right? We're moving into the part where people just buy the smart home. And
right.
I think that the part where we're waving our hands around and saying, "Oh, we'll always be needed." I think we have to realize that someone, yes, will always be needed. But my point for this whole argument of this thing is, right now we have hundreds of companies servicing these clients. What happens when they go away? Sure, there will still be a couple of clients that still need your help, but you still have hundreds and hundreds of companies. They're all going to be highly competitive. They're all going to be dropping their prices and not making 50 and 60 points on product anymore. This is going to be a completely different market. And I think that's my point this weekend was not that the high end was going to go away, but the high end was going to be immensely more competitive, regardless of relationships with people. When you have so many middle market players move up into the high end to see if they can play in that market. And it doesn't matter if they do or don't live, because I don't think this is all going to shake out in different ways. You're going to have some people that do make it and make a good business and a good living out of focusing on high end products. Mm-hmm. But the vast majority of the work is still going to be down in what we call the low end market, but maybe even the DIY market. I think that's where we really need to look at and focus. We focus our attention on even more. And we've talked to Richard Berry. We've definitely talked to Chris Gamble over in the UK about his efforts. I can't say that the high end is going to live, because it's going to live for somebody, but it's not going to be the vast majority of integrators like it is today.
Right.
That market is gone.
No, and I agree with with most of what you said. I think you and I definitely agree more than we disagree on it. It is just a matter of degrees. I feel like I think that part of what I pointed out in the conversation on the hub is that these are difficult conversations to have until we maybe figure out a way. And I don't know how to approach this, but I'd like to see if I can figure it out at some point to try and tie some metrics to this, because one person's definition of high end might be different than another's. And how do you quantify that? And that may be different in different markets. And I don't want to get too, in the weeds about that, but I think that I've worked in a number of different markets, and I think of the high end, what I define as the high end. And I think that, to me, there's already an immense amount of pressure. Like, I can't think of a single middle market player in any market that I've ever worked in that isn't already targeting the high end and isn't already coming to the table with lower prices. So that may increase a little bit as the market pressure ramps up. It may increase a lot as the market pressure ramps up. But I think there are elements at play at the very high end of the market, especially, where it is very relationship driven. And you've got technologies like automated shades and panelized lighting and architectural speakers and high-end 2-channel audio and true dedicated home theater. And there's a number of other technologies out there that will remain insulated from this, not forever and not completely, but when you look at things in a matter of scale and not just black and white, then it does become clear that, yes, there are segments of the market that will be less affected by this than others, and segments of the market that I think are at great risk of being completely obliterated by it. And so, yes, no matter what portion of the market you work in and make your living in, and how you feed your family, it is important to pay attention to this. And I think this article does a great job of summarizing some of the things that, may, once you stop and think about them, seem obvious, but to see them all put into one place and put together like Bruno has in this piece, I thought it was very well done. Worth a read, worth thinking about. And I do think, just to come back full circle, Seth, that I agree with you. These technologies are coming in, and it is a complete sea change that's going on in the home and the things that you can do. That's one of the core themes of the show, right? This is one of the main reasons why we started doing this show years ago, was to talk about this. We've been talking about this now for over 3 years. So this is not a new thing. I just think that, I guess the main theme of what I'm trying to say is, when we have this conversation, let's either figure out some metrics to tie it to, or if we want to keep it simpler and move on, let's at least paint in grayscale and not black and white.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're definitely in on agreement on way more than it looks like we're not in agreement. My point isn't that the markets are going to disappear. I mean, we definitely will still have middle market home theater installs. There'll just be fewer of them. Same thing with higher end. Like, there'll just be fewer of them to go around to the dealers that are in a certain market, right? Because at the end of the day, if the middle market is moving away from products like Control4 and Crestron, and mind you, Control4 and Crestron are moving away from the middle market at the same time. They're moving up to the higher end and moving their dealers up to the higher end. You don't see Control4 dropping their prices. You see them adding in networking product that's way more expensive than off the shelf networking product. You see them buying the speaker product that they just purchased. It was a high end speaker company. Kef, was it? I believe.
Oh, did they? I missed that.
It was a speaker company. I can't remember the name of it, but
okay.
They purchased a speaker company, and it's good for them. But like they're not. Control4 is definitely not moving towards that DIY market. It doesn't seem like the company is even interested in that anymore.
They purchased Triad, not Kef.
Triad, that's what it was. Yeah. So, I'm just saying that these middle market and what we call lower market or low end do it yourself installs are going to the lower end, the do it yourself stuff is going to blow up, and that's going to gain awareness into the higher end markets where, as Greg is pointing out in the chat room, why do I need to be charged thousands of dollars to control the lights with when I can go out and purchase when so and so can go out, and we can say for only so much longer that, oh, well, your house needs to have this full-blown HomeWorks QS system in it. But
Yeah.
How long are we going to be able to maintain those price points as an industry? And how long will that be acceptable for the customers before they just, they start backing off? And that's really the risk that we run is when the customers start backing off. And you've said this before, that every project you've ever worked on, no matter how high end it was, there's definitely a budget on those projects.
Yep.
And where people find the value and they don't find the value, they'll start cutting. So it'll be an interesting market in 5 years to turn around and look back at this and say, look at where we are and where we came from, for sure.
Yep, I totally agree. Well, let's move on from that one and close out the show here with the CE Pro 100 of 2017 came out, and we're not going to dive super deep into this. This is obviously a big flagship offering, I guess, annual deal for CE Pro that when they put this out, and this is always sparks a lot of industry conversation. But there was a few points here, Seth, that you had pulled out of there to touch on about this.
Yeah, I thought there were a couple of interesting points in here. It kind of tie back into what we've been talking about here with the Bruno's days of AVs, home automation coming to an end. Vivint is number one. I think they had $500 million in sales or something like that. I don't have it right in front of me. It's loading up. I'm having some fun computer issues tonight.
Technical difficulties here. Vivint, Vivint number one, Best Buy number two, and that was what you had on here. Let me see if I can open up the PDF. We'll get the exact number, but I think that is interesting. Vivint is obviously a very large company. We've had them on the show as well, and a very different model, and I think does tie back into that conversation we were just having about managed services in the home, and that is really Vivint's bread and butter, is not necessarily going in and doing a big multi-$1,000 install, but going in there and just having the managed services and the RMR as a huge part of their model.
Yep. So their revenues for the year were almost $800 million, which is insane to think about. Yeah, Best Buy comes in under them at $650 million with an average install price of $130. Best Buy is including a bunch of their like Geek Squad, consulting type things in there. So that's kind of how that number goes down. ADT is below that, a big giant security company here in the US and abroad. And then is kind of where you start into the hybrid retail / custom integrators, which are like Just One Touch Video. I believe that's a big AV type store out on the West Coast at 34 million. And it starts going down from there. But what I thought was interesting was that these numbers are up 12%. The median revenue per installation grew to $32,520, and it's up 12% from last year. And this year, I think it was interesting as well that if you look back historically, these numbers weren't this large. Like these numbers have gotten bigger. You used to be you could get on to the CE Pro top 100 and with any solid $2 million company, and now the lowest. I say the lowest. These guys are doing a ton of work to be on this list, but the top 100, the 100 company on here is doing 2.39 million a year, which is a good bit of that's a good amount of work. I've been part of a couple of companies that were doing that. Yep. My last company is on here, $9 million of work. So crazy.
Yeah. That's interesting. Greg, again, over in the chat room, actually pointed out something that to be honest, I don't know how significant this is, but it is consistent. There's a column, second column in has a V for verified or E for estimated. So again, I don't know how significant that is, but it does appear that Best Buy, just doing a quick scan down this list, is I think literally the only company on this entire list with an E next to it. Not quite sure what to make of that.
I think they've addressed that a couple times in the past about what that means and how they derive that data from Best Buy's, I believe they're public filings, if I'm not mistaken.
Got it.
yeah, they break it down from their quarterly revenues and kind of do some math here and there and use analysts to figure out basically how much they're putting in, how much they're doing in the AV side of things, and for their professional services side of things, which is like Geek Squad, which would tie into computers and networking too.
Yep.
So that's how that number gets up there. I think Vivint is killing it though. I mean, 800. I'm sure some of that's like RMR, like security contracts. But that's $800 million,
staggering.
$757 million. Absolutely staggering. Yeah. That's crazy.
All right, Seth. Well, we'll leave it there and obviously dive into that report if you're interested. There's a ton of information in there, and it's always a really good read. So go check that out.
Yep. But, congrats to everybody who made it on that list too. It takes a lot to be on this list, and it takes a lot of work.
The high end is alive and kicking, Seth.
Yeah.
All right, let's not go back there. I know. All right, well, we'll wrap it up here. I want to thank everybody, as always, for listening. We really appreciate you tuning in. Once again, huge thank you to everybody who has supported the show over on our Patreon page. If you're interested in learning more about that, HomeTech.fm/support. Once again, HomeTech.fm/support is the way to do that. We've also had some good interaction lately on Twitter, and we would love to see more of that. So at HomeTech Podcast is a great place to follow us and engage with us, and we'd love to see you over there.
Absolutely. And I had a couple more submissions this last week on the Projects project.
Oh, that's right.
Didn't spend any time renaming it. Yeah. So
still working on the name.
Yeah. If you have anything that you want to submit, like I said, if you're a dealer and you've done this really cool project and you want to, send it over and talk to us about something cool that you've done on a project, or if you're somebody who did everything yourself, anything in between, submit it to us. We'd love to chat with you and just maybe a 5-10 minute conversation and just ask a couple questions. Maybe we get it on the podcast later on. But yeah, we've gotten a couple of these in this last week, and they're still awesome. I'm just blown away by what people are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been really interesting to see those come in, and we look forward to reaching out and connecting with those of you who have submitted them, and hopefully getting a few of you featured on the show here very soon. So once again, HomeTech.fm/projects. With that, we'll let you go. Thanks, Seth. Look forward to reconnecting with you next week.
Sounds good. I'll talk to you next week, Jason.
All right. Take care.